Whoops. Apologies. Had the wrong video queued up there. Well, I'm Bruce McDonald, and this is the Talamanca Review. It's Saturday, the 4th of October. It's 7:52 p.m. I took, 2-3 days off of podcasting, couple days. I do that to cleanse my palate, like the ginger that comes with your sushi. Because if I keep going, I'll just keep kind of drilling down on the same theme. So sometimes it's good to just take a couple days off and reorientate and come at things anew. As I've mentioned several times on the podcast, back into reading in a big way. And I decided that maybe I should move out from, my favorite writers and open my mind a little bit. And so I generated a list of the Booker Prize winners for the last 10 years. And I got the first 3 books on the list. And they're horrible. Now, the Booker Prize is like the Pulitzer Prize for the Commonwealth. The Pulitzer Prize is for the United States, and the Booker Prize is the literary prize for the whole Commonwealth, which includes Australia, Canada, New Zealand. And so you get a really interesting long list and short list of what they say is the best literature out there, but it isn't. It's bloody horrible, man, I have to report to you. Bloody horrible indeed. Little or no redeeming quality. And I find myself asking, how did it get to this point? How did we get to the point where we can't even tell and share beautiful stories anymore? It used to be as natural as breathing, And then I started to think, more and more about the arts. I got myself a new chair. It's pretty comfortable. I was down in San Jose getting the documents for my residency, and I went to Home Depot, Office Depot while I was there, and got myself a good chair. I remember when I was growing up, beauty kept me alive. It's a bold statement, I realize that, but it's true. It's another thing that was very, very persistent in my life in my late teens and 20s. You would always see me with a book in my hand. And I think that those are the years that people have to read. From about 15 to 25, thereabouts. It could be 20 to 30, but there's a decade where, if you're so inclined, and not everybody is, I mean, I was the only one in my family, you start to consume the rarefied and beatified art of the world. Because the art is the best record of history. Because the art contains more than just the one dimension of history and the rigors by which it is researched, which is a farce. And this used to be a way of life that people would dedicate themselves to. It was a dedicated life. It was a devotional life. The life of letters. And many of these great writers and poets, they didn't make out like bandits. They made enough to live. They got free travel and accommodation from time to time in the invitation of a university or somebody else. But the millionaire writer never existed. It worked out that way for Hemingway, but Hemingway was, like, I think, one of the last writers. One of the very last. And I don't want to be too critical, but I just can't get over how bad these books are. And what I noticed is there's a lot of ethnic voices now. Traditional non-English names consistently winning the Booker Prize, although Margaret Atwood won in 2019 for The Testaments. She was a co-winner. Pure poison comes out of her fingers. Pure poison. And if you've had a relationship in your life with beauty, beauty is a spiritual thing. It is a combination of emotions high and low. Not low per se, but awe, wonder, splendor, magnificence, wholeness, unity. These are all attributes of beauty. A beautiful poem, a beautiful book, a beautiful painting, a beautiful home, a beautiful woman. Beauty. And I look at the world now, and my God, you'd be panning a long time in the currents and creeks of Western civilization to get a nugget of beauty. It's not there anymore. This incredible emotion, or it's not an emotion either, this incredible state of being, which is the state of being that is created by the recognition of beauty, true beauty. Was an incredible spiritual state, and we used to be the best at it. Nobody did beauty better than the West. China had its concepts, but to the Western eye and to the Western ear, it was just too much of this crimson red and whining string instruments and cymbals in their music. It just didn't seem beautiful. And in fact, it was never created to be beautiful. The Chinese aesthetic is all about protection. Feng Shui is about protection. Good energy means you're protected. And so a lot of the colors and the aesthetic sensibilities that emerged in Chinese society were dictated by these psychic norms of protection and chasing away spirits and ghosts that could harm people. A big part of their aesthetic, I don't know if you've ever heard that before. Also on their religious holidays, they just blast off firecrackers, man. Not the big fireworks show like we do in the West on July 4 and July 1 in Canada. Not like that, but they're the smaller firecrackers that sound like a gunshot. And they do this to scare off spirits. That's why they do it. Loud banging sound to scare off the spirits. So the Asian aesthetic is very astral, which is why the color red is so prominent. Very, very astral culture. Oh, we are too with our Abrahamic religions, there's no doubt about that, but it was our search for beauty that made us different. Now, there were times that we went off track with that. Some people say that the Arabic world advanced more quickly mathematically, and that is a verifiable historical fact. And one of the reasons that they were able to adapt to mathematics and figure out trigonometry and stuff like this is, in their art, they were constantly working with patterns, almost like that flower of life pattern. Those endless fractals. And this, of course, opened them up to mathematical thought. And the main reason they focused on patterns, like the ornate ceramic tile patterns you see in like Turkish palaces and stuff, that was all part of the Arabic aesthetic. And it evolved because the Arabic aesthetic was not allowed to paint or draw the female nude. Whereas in the West, that was a pastime of sorts. You know, when I grew up, I had a distinct sense that the West was an exceptional and superior place. But I was not referring to race. It was the ceaseless way we investigated everything, looking for a new cultural container because we were new countries. And there was something about the innovation of that, the pursuit of that, that I think made us special. We had a very prosperous economy. Man, you could not fail in the 70s, 80s, or 90s unless you really tried. Really tried. There was always a way to make a buck. There was always a way to get by. There was always somebody hiring. There was always a second chance right around the corner. I think also as a general rule, the West has always been better at motivating populations. And I mean that sincerely. There's no tongue in cheek. I'm not doing some kind of veiled reference to, the crowd, that seminal 1901 or 1905 work on mass psychosis and crowd control, one of Hitler's favorite books apparently. But I think that people were just more willing to trust the leaders. And this is characteristic of any kind of a new venture. And the West, the new West, because there's an old West and there's a new West. And the old West is Europe. And the new West is the Five Eyes, with one member of the Five Eyes, Great Britain, being a member of the Old West. It's interesting how Britain has that pivot. Very interesting. Now, one of the things that we habitually did was we celebrated beauty. And there was always, usually, not always, but usually something beautiful in the world. And if you're young, there's all kinds of beautiful things to consume. Moby Dick's about 170 years old now. And the 20th century was a very interesting century for beauty. Because World War I and World War II absolutely decimated beauty. You see it in the early 20th century writing, you know. You see it in T.S. Eliot, you see it in Ezra Pound, as these Ubermenches, these super sensitive souls, had their minds taken through the horrors of World War II. World War I and World War II for Pound and Eliot, but World War I mainly was Eliot. World War II was Ezra Pound. Maybe the greatest symbologist to live in the last 150 years. Master of semiotics. Let me look that up for you because that's actually a really good one. What is semiotics? Semiotics is the systematic study of signs and symbols and how they are used to create, communicate, and interpret meaning. It's often described as the science of signs and explores how meaning-making, semiosis, happens in everything from language and art to gestures, fashion, and culture. And the key concepts in semiotics are sign, the basic unit of semiotics, and the model developed by Ferdinand de Saussure. A sign is composed of two inseparable parts. The signifier, that's the physical form of the sign. It could be the sound of a word, the image of a flag, the arrangement of colors on a traffic light. And the signified, which is the mental concept or idea to which the signifier refers. For example, the concept of a tree, the idea of nationhood, the command to stop. And the relationship between the signifier and the signified is often arbitrary and based on cultural convention. So semiosis is the process of sign communicating meaning or the process of interpreting a sign. So there's types of signs. There's an icon, and that's a sign that resembles its object. That's a photograph, a drawing, or a no smoking picture. An index is a sign that has a direct physical or causal connection to its object. For example, smoke is an index of fire. A fever is an index of illness. A pointing finger is an index of direction. Symbol, a sign whose relationship to its object is arbitrary and purely based on cultural convention and learning. Words in a language, national flags, most logos, a red traffic light. I don't think that's quite right, but I'll come back to that. So denotation and connotation. Denotation is the literal, explicit, and primary meaning of a sign. And connotation is the secondary cultural or emotional meanings associated with a sign. So the literal denotation is a rose is a specific type of flower, and the connotation is a rose connotes love, passion, and romance. So in essence, semiotics helps us decode the hidden messages, cultural codes, and underlying structures and that shape how we perceive and interact with the world. That would be what semiotics is if we had no evil in the world. And especially if we were not living in a world at the management and direction level was completely and utterly dominated by evil. So semiotics and MK Ultra would be first cousins. if you want to look at it through the dark lens. So Pound, he was a master symbologist. He saw through all the bullshit. And he was one of the early voices of the 20th century. Well, not the only one. I mean, there was Henry Ford. You got to understand that this concept of anti-Semitism, it creeps up with a vigorous force every 30 years or so. Like, for the last 150 years in North American society. So you got Henry Ford talking about the international Jew in the early part of the 20th century. And none of the usual dismissals can be applied to Ford. Usually they say that anti-Semitic people are jealous. They're materially jealous of the success of the Jews, socially jealous of the status of the Jews, intellectually jealous of the accomplishments of the Jews, artistically jealous of the accomplishments of the Jews. But Henry Ford was a lion of industry. He literally invented the manufacturing line in the world for the Ford cars. Everybody that makes cars now, that's almost everybody. China makes cars now. Korea, Japan, Germany, America, Italy. I think Britain still makes a couple cars. Every one of them owe a debt to Henry Ford for pioneering the assembly line. And then after Henry Ford, during World War II, you get Ezra Pound. And this is where the beauty in the West is sabotaged. Because left to his own devices, Pound would have been one of the most influential writers in the direction of pure beauty of anybody in the 20th century. But he got very emotionally caught up in World War II, saw right through the whole thing, saw the whole thing as, I don't know what I'd call it, like, let's just say he saw the Jewishness of it. You couldn't fool Ezra Pound. He's too smart. And therefore we have to ask ourselves, where did all the beauty go? You know, one of the reasons that people have been habitually attracted to the West is because of this truth and beauty vibration. That was definitely in the West, and not too many other places. For beauty to exist, there has to be the receiver of beauty. And the receiver of beauty must have some modicum of innocence within them, no matter what their age. Preservation of innocence is preservation of soul. It doesn't mean that you have to live a life of false positivism, like you went to an Anthony Robbins retreat. That's not what it means at all. Innocence is the purity of connection with life with no projections upon it, just receiving. And you have to have this space inside your consciousness to receive beauty as well. And somehow between 1945 and 2025, you know, 80 years now. We've lost beauty. Women used to motivate men to do unbelievable things. Unbelievable things. A man would do almost anything to win the heart and trust of a woman he saw beauty within. Look at it now. Where's the beauty now? It's all gone. You see, the machine doesn't want beauty. The machine can't give you beauty. There's a certain craftsmanship in the user interface design of an iPhone or even an Apple computer. I'll give you that. It's not beauty, though. It's craftsmanship. We have some good technological craftsmanship. Craftsmanship used to be through the roof before the manufacturing process. If you were to buy a table or you were to buy an armoire for your master bedroom, the detail in the wood carving would be mind-boggling. It would probably represent weeks, if not months of work for a woodworker, a wood artisan. You build 3 or 4 pieces in a year, you sell them, and feed a family of 2 or 3 kids. That's what a craftsman was, a tradesman, an artisan. And that we still have that. A lot of it has gone over into technology. But I really want you to get my main point here. I'm not sure if I've made it. Maybe I'm stumbling with language tonight. I don't know. I've been off a couple days. Let me try my best here. I found I'll try to use common reference points so I don't lose anybody. I found Blade Runner, one of the early movies of Ridley Scott. I found it to be beautiful. I knew the moment I saw that movie at 18 years old in 1984, I just knew I'd seen something extraordinary. And when I was in the theater, people were leaving. And then when it got to the end, and Roy Batty is dying, the android, the Nexus 6, he finds the beauty of life. And he saves the life of the person who killed everybody he loves. And that would be Deckard, played by Harrison Ford. And then he gives that beautiful speech on the rooftop in the rain about what it means to be alive and how he finally found gratitude for life. So much gratitude for life that he couldn't bring himself to take the life of another living thing. That was a moment of beauty. You can look it up on YouTube. The scene that is referenced is called Tears in the Rain. There have been dozens and dozens and dozens of video essays done about it because it's beautiful. That's how beauty affects people. You can't even lay words to it, really. It's like a common internal experience, and if you meet somebody and you ask them, do you see the beauty? And you don't even have to ask. You can tell just by looking at their face, they see the same thing. I mean, even even if you want to go back to like the early 60s and Ken Kesey, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest is essentially a book of social activism, but it also has tremendous beauty, and the beauty is in the characters, and the beauty is in the ending when the chief breaks out, picks up the water fountain, smashes it through the window, and just runs off into the woods, leaves the loony bin behind. After they gave the lobotomy to Randall P. McMurphy, played by Jack Nicholson. But there was beauty in that. That's why people remember it. There was beauty in it. But you can also at the same time see the beginning of this social justice literature, right? And the dangers of institutionalism, and the dangers of psychiatry, and the dangers of the penal system. In many ways, it was the perfect representative work of the new budding hippie consciousness against the old system-driven consciousness. But somehow, even in that, Kesey was able to find beauty. And honestly, I'll tell you this, I cannot remember the last time I saw real beauty. Maybe, and this is going to sound weird, but maybe the ending of True Detective Season 1, when Rust Cole, played by Matthew McConaughey, is given a reprieve from his own cynicism, from his own pessimism. In a near-death experience, he was able to meet his daughter, who died when she was very young, 3 or 5 years old. And it utterly transformed him. And it was beautiful. But to get to that one moment of beauty, you had to go through this hellscape of 8 episodes. You know? So why is all Bruce going on about all this stuff? Well, I made the mistake of reading some Emily Dickinson this afternoon. Emily Dickinson was a remarkable poet. I think she lived in the 1800s. Let me just check. When did Emily Dickinson live? Um, she was born December 10, 1830, and she died May 15, 1886. American poet, spent the vast majority of her life in Amherst, Massachusetts. Now considered one of the most important figures in American poetry. She never published her poetry when she was alive. All of her writing was turned over to universities. After her death, she never wanted to be a poet. She's this very quiet woman that just generated. Let me give you some, man. Why am I? Why am I making you guess? I'll just find something here. Uh, Yeah, everything now is it's just ugly. When do we get the renewal? I mean, every generation we've had what I call warning art. And warning art is social activism masquerading as art or beauty, channeling rage. I mean, even Ozzy Osbourne had it. Listen very closely to War Pigs and have the lyrics open in a browser and read the lyrics as the song is sung. Ozzy was reacting to the world, you know? And, holy spumoli, man. I got a lot of books in here now, but I think that's what an iPad is for, is books. Yeah, we'll get that downloaded. So she did this, she just did all this writing and it never saw the light of day. She never lived the life of a literary celebrity. And it's kind of remarkable, actually, when you think about it. The writers who are still doing pretty decent work now, like Japan's Haruki Murakami and Cormac McCarthy until he died in 2022, Thomas Pynchon, you know. By the way, for those of you who have seen One Battle After Another with Leonardo DiCaprio and Sean Penn and Benicio del Toro, some critics are calling it the best movie in the last decade. I had a chance to see it. It was okay. It's an Antifa wet dream movie, but that's loosely based on Thomas Pynchon's Vineland. You know? So we get all these warnings, like even Nirvana warned us. Kurt Cobain, his death was a warning. Even if it was Courtney Love who killed him. Doesn't matter the circumstances of his death. It was a warning. And all our art now is spiritually malnourished. It's just distraction and indulgence and lust. You can't tell me. I mean, look at the art scene now. You got that Serbian bitch, Marina Abramovic, doing her satanic shit. You got her disciples like Lady Gaga. There's no beauty. You see, beauty is an aspect of the divine, and the Luciferian consciousness cannot encompass it. It's one of those things that is prohibited to the Luciferian consciousness. Beauty. Beauty is an attribute of the divine. And the ability to perceive beauty means that the spark of the divine is alive inside you. And just when we thought, we were going to start to heal, because it takes a long time to heal from something like World War II. It's like 3 generations, man. You think this is an overnight thing? I went to a workshop, man, with my shaman, and I had my trauma lifted in an ayahuasca ceremony. No, you didn't, you fucking idiot. You got a little bit of a view on it, and that's it. You haven't exorcised your trauma. Stop talking shit. Beauty's always been a big part of my life. The last 3 chapters of The Devil in Us are very beautiful. Holy place, talking about building this house with my son. Very beautiful experience. I live in a beautiful place. Beauty's always around me now. The beauty of the land, the beauty of the wind, the beauty of the sky, the beauty of the stars in the night sky, and the beauty of the rain hitting my roof, the beauty of the conflagration of toads and frogs when it rains. I gotta walk with a light at night so I don't step on them. There's so many. It's also beautiful. Just beautiful, you know? Absolutely beautiful. So I have not been able to live without beauty, but there's a lot of people that can. A lot of people that can. I don't know how they can, but they can. Chinese don't need beauty. They don't need it. They live without it. They actually think beauty is an evil. So do the Indians. I don't know how anybody could get that notion in their head. But in the case of the Chinese and the Indians, I think they're referring more to the beauty of a woman. And that I do understand. I would like to do something beautiful. Share some beauty with you. I can't find any Emily Dickinson readily available now. I don't think we'll survive without beauty. And the beauty we created and the beauty we maintained in the world, it's all being taken away now. We're being told that we're an evil people. We should self-suicide, self-terminate, euthanize. The world would be a better place. And the brown and the black and the yellow and the red people would all just get along fine. You believe that? So that's what set me off today, was reading some Emily Dickinson. We're going to have to learn how to preserve beauty, you know? just like we preserve jam. I'm Bruce McDonald, and this has been the Talamanca Review.